listening to Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps creatives in film get where they're going faster by sharing the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives across the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley.
Hello, everybody. My name's Leslie Raymond. I direct the Ann Arbor Film Festival. So glad to be here today. You may know me as the Ann Arbor Film Festival director, possibly. And what I'm really excited about right now is that we're making plans for our 60th film festival that's coming up at the end of March. It'll be March 22nd to the 27th. And we're planning for both an in-person and online event this year. So that's new. It's hybrid. And there are all kinds of wonderful planning challenges that we're dealing with at every moment. So that's my life right now. Love it.
Leslie Raymond, welcome to the Make It podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much for that. And that is exciting. Finally being able to go to a festival in person. I know a lot of people, including Sundance, were disappointed that Sundance couldn't happen in person this year. Our friends down at Indie Memphis created some virtual screenings and some theater-based screenings in Memphis for Sundance. So there's a lot of creative ways to sort of work around these times as long as we can link hands and join each other and help each other out, which is kind of what this podcast is all about. Before we get too deep into the interview, I want to give the audience a deeper sense of who you are. So I'm going to read a little bit of a summary of your career, a bio, if you will. And as I always say, this is the internet. So if anything is incorrect or needs to be updated, feel free to amend to this or correct anything that seems incorrect.
All right.
Leslie Raymond joined the Ann Arbor Film Festival as its executive director in August 2013. In September 2019, Raymond's leadership role expanded to include festival programming. Prior to her position with the Ann Arbor Film Festival as a teaching artist and educator, she founded the New Media program at University of Texas at San Antonio and served as an assistant professor of art in digital video and new media art at Oakland University, where she was recognized with an Innovations in Teaching Award. Raymond is a Film Festival Alliance board member and a third-generation American of Chinese and Jewish descent. She holds a BFA in film and video from the Rhode Island School of Design, MFA in new genres from the University of Michigan School of Art and Design, and also studied film, video, and new media art at the Art Institute of Chicago. Wow, what a background. And by the time this conversation publishes, I think we'll be right upon or right before award season, Academy Award season. So I'd love to start by asking you, what were the best movies or what are your favorite movies from 2021?
Oh, wow. You know what happened to me this year is I got really into Marvel. So Shang-Chi was right at the top of my list. How that happened is an interesting little side story in that my husband is a museum exhibition designer and fabricator. And at the Henry Ford Museum here in Southeast Michigan, there was this Marvel comic exhibit from a company in Germany. And during the pandemic, they weren't sure if this German company was going to be able to come over and take it down and move it to Chicago. So they hired my husband's company to, provide support and backup on that. And part of his research was that he wanted to watch a ton of Marvel movies. And I realized, the more I watched, the more I actually really started to enjoy them. Some of them are much better made than others, obviously, but just the universe that they create and the way they all cross paths with each other and make references to each other. I just find it really rich, and that the characters, so many of them are just very relatable. There's a real human aspect and dynamic to the characters in those films. So that's what the one that rises to the top of my mind right now.
I imagine that somewhere at the MCU, the Marvel Comic Universe, that they have a giant corkboard bigger than you've ever seen with a bunch of yarn and thumbtacks that connect each character and each storyline to each other, because I don't know how they keep up with it without making a mistake in the continuity. I really think that is the most complex part of it. Of course, you would have, the Scorseses of the world that would say, hey, this isn't cinema. And I don't know how you feel, Leslie, but I think he's right. But I think that people that go see those movies aren't anticipating cinema. So, you talked about Shang-Chi, like that bus scene is unbelievable. that is a work of mastery to pull that off. And then when you find out how they pulled it off, you're just like, I love little inside baseball like that. And when you go to festivals, Ann Arbor included, you kind of get that inside baseball on how certain films are made. And so I just love that. So to me, I'm with you. And I think the most complex thing about it is keeping up with those storylines and making sure that there isn't some sort of problem, with it.
Right. That's not going to match up with some other part of the storyline. Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting what you say about, how do we think about what's film, or what's a film experience? How do we categorize it as, mass entertainment versus an artistic expression? And, as the director of the oldest experimental film festival in North America, it's definitely a topic of high interest to me. The type of work that we show at the film festival is the polar opposite of a Marvel movie. One of the things I'm fascinated with looking at the credits of the Marvel films is it's not just, 100 special effects people have worked on it, but
1,000.
Dozens of special effect companies, with hundreds of workers in each one. And those credits, just go by for miles. It's mind blowing. The type of films that we tend to show are usually made by a single person. A single artist. Oftentimes they'll have a small crew. We'll sometimes show films that are a little larger in production scale, but I think what happens when it's like this sort of group think, or in this large scale mainstream type of film entertainment, it's a kind of way where everybody's sort of coming together to put their energy and mind and creativity together to form like one large statement. Yeah. And it can speak to so many people because the message and the means and all that, it has to bring together all of those elements. And so just by the very fact that hundreds of people are being fused together in a way to create this expression, I think it represents much more a kind of element that's within the mainstream in a way. And at the same time, I think that they help to define the mainstream. It's funny because being, having grown up kind of a punk rock kid, and my husband too, we, a year ago on New Year's, we have a 11-year-old, and we stayed up for New Year's. This would have been, going into 2021. And my husband had this idea, hey, let's watch Hamilton. We, have heard good things about it, never checked it out. So, it was like, oh, it's on Disney. We don't have a subscription to that. And it was funny because we were both like, well, as seasoned, punk rockers, it's like Disney has been, the evil giant, all this time, dealing with any kind of copyright issues, or, you try to appropriate and within fair use, and, they'll find you. And so it's always been like, oh, Disney, the evil company, who's going to sign up for that subscription? I was like, no, you have to do it because I direct an experimental film festival. But we did. He did, and we watched Hamilton, and then shortly thereafter we discovered, yes, the Marvel universe is available on Disney. And
on Disney.
There ensued, a year of crazy binge watching of Marvel movies. And now our daughter is completely hooked. And she went from the drama of any normal movie kind of is unsettling to her. And she didn't like to watch movies. But then with this Marvel thing, she was like, I really want to watch these. And she would sit there on the couch and just literally shake in certain scenes, because they're overwhelming,
Yeah.
But I watched her, force herself to acclimatize to the drama. And anyway, now she's a total, Marvel geek, Marvel maven. I don't know what you want to call it. It's hilarious.
Well, it's the criticism of the Marvel films, I guess, is that they don't tell stories about human beings because they're superheroes or supervillains. They're in situations that no real human being would be involved in. So in a way, I suppose it's a fair criticism, but also it allows kids, right, to dive into the content and into dramatic situations where I would imagine somewhere every kid knows, okay, but it's okay because these people don't really exist. This is complete. I can be in a different place, try to understand something about how things work, how communication works, how problems are solved without the risk of and the reality of being, drawn right into a true human conflict. I mean, if I watch Spider-Man, I sort of understand the role that martyrdom maybe plays in life, right? And the penalty for making exceptions, whatever. I can learn that as a kid, which is much different than watching the movie Kids, where now you're plunged into some real life stuff and you might really be paranoid to leave outside your house and deal with human beings in a real way. So, and by the way,
very true.
Totally give in to the streaming because the way we look at it in business is bundling and unbundling. That's all innovation is. Okay, everything's unbundled. If we bundle it, it's innovation. So right now we're in a phase of unbundling. Okay, everything's bundled in cable. Let's unbundle it and give people a choice. Let them tailor their. So then everybody's going to unbundle, and then the biggest players are going to acquire everyone, and then everything will be rebundled. And we'll call it innovation. It'll be on some new piece of technology. And say you can
capitalism.
Yeah, you can get Disney, ESPN, Hulu, and 100 other things all for one price. Right. And so that's all we do over and over and over again for hundreds of years as we bundle and we unbundle. I'd love to take you back a little bit. You mentioned growing up. And, I want to drop a dime here for the audience listening. You've mentioned your husband a few times. Husband is Jason J. Stevens, and we'll talk a little bit about how you guys work together. But you can find him on the internet and a very interesting guy in his own right. I want to take you back a little bit. You grew up with a potter and an architect. What was the best part of that? And was there a moment growing up that you can remember that you knew you wanted to live a life in film?
Great question. I feel really fortunate to have the parents that I have, a potter mom and an architect dad, kind of these archetypes almost of,
right.
A masculine and feminine kind of idea, the builder, and then the person who creates vessels with earth. And they're kind of true modernist artists. They came out of Cranbrook in the late 1950s. They met there.
And Cranbrook is a suburb in
it's
Michigan,
in the suburbs of Detroit, and there's a well-known art school there. They also have like a college preparatory high school and whatever K through 12. Mm-hmm. And they have a art museum, a science institute, and things like that. That art school that's there is a graduate level program that became well known in the mid 20th century because they had people there like the Saarinen, the famous architects, the Saarinen, the Eameses, famous designers were there, and other people like that. And the way that it's structured, it's not so much like you go and take classes, but they have those teachers are more like artists and residents who are doing their work. And then you as the grad student have your studio practice and you come together for critiques and things like that. So I actually had the good fortune to go to that college preparatory school for high school and be, on this incredible campus designed by the Saarinens with Carl Millis sculptures and all of this. And my parents, they met there, but they after they left Cranbrook, they went to Ann Arbor, taught at the University of Michigan, and then my mom got a grant to go to Japan. There had been one of the Japanese national treasures who came to Cranbrook when she was there, a potter, and hung out with the students there and invited them, said, if anybody wants to come to Japan and work in my studio, come on. And so she got this grant and she went, and my dad followed her over there. He ended up working for Pacific Architects and Engineers in Tokyo. And she was at this potter's studio out in the country. And they spent a bunch of years in Japan and traveling around Southeast Asia. Now, in the 50s, I don't think it was legal for a Jewish person and a Chinese person to actually be together. Their families were like, wait a minute, you're supposed to marry a Chinese person, Chinese daughter, and you're supposed to marry a Jewish person, Jewish son. And so they kind of escaped, I guess. I don't know if they would paint it this way, but, from my romanticized point of view, they took off and they ended up eloping in Japan. And they did, as I mentioned, travel a lot through Southeast Asia. At one point, they got a VW bus in probably the early 60s. I would not say they were hippies, but they got a VW bus and they drove it all through India. They got it shipped to like the southern tip of India, and then they zigzagged all around the country. So they had this really rich life. BC, as my mom puts it, before children. She was, at one point they came back because she got a teaching job at University of Washington to teach ceramics there. And my dad, I guess he was going to take a little break, just go to the library every day. And he got a telegram from Pacific Architects and Engineers. We want you to start an office in Bangkok. Mm-hmm. And he thought, oh, well, I'm happy doing nothing right now. So he telegrammed back jokingly saying, well, you got to offer me twice that amount. And then they did. So he's like, oh, I got to go. And then my mom was like, well, I think I'm going to stay here. And then she told me that she took a look when she saw the look on his face. She's like, oh, I guess I got to go. So they were pretty tied. They both were, grounded in their careers, but they had a lot of give and take around that. And so they went to Bangkok, and after a few years, my brother was born. And my mom said, they decided at a certain point, it just made sense to come back to the States. And they ended up, after going to St. Paul, Minnesota, where I was born, and then hopping over to Cleveland for a short stint, they came back to Southeast Michigan. There's a really rich scene of potters in Southeast Michigan that are very chummy. And,
who knew?
Yeah, right. So that was a part of it, I'm sure. And then, they ended up moving not too far from where Cranbrook is. And as public school systems go, the public school system in that area is quite good. So I did that for a while. My brother and I did. And then at some point we made the switch and ended up at high school over at Cranbrook, which was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My parents also eloped. My dad is German, white, I guess you could say, but who's adopted, brought over here from Fischbach, Germany, here to the States. And my mom is Black. That wasn't really cool in the early 70s. And so, although I'm not sure that was the motivation, but they eloped. And then even there should be a documentary on VW buses, because my dad also had one and was a bit of a hippie. He looked like Jesus in the 70s. That's my visual of him. And he used to roll his own bugler and all this stuff. And just like, I'm sure that was sort of the thing to do in the 60s and 70s, was to get a VW bug and go see the world on these new interstate systems that have been created in the last sort of 20 years. So it's nothing that a kid today could fully understand. And that's why we probably need a documentary on it. Was there a moment growing up with your parents where you sort of said, I love storytelling, I love film, I think I want to live a life in film, or I want to teach film, or anything like that?
Well, as I grew up, it was normal to make art. And I never really thought about it like, ooh, I'm so passionate about doing this and continuing to do this. No, what really happened to me was in high school, I had assigned to me, my advisor happened to be the person who was the head of the art program. And I wasn't, I made art, but when I came into high school, I was a band kid. I played the flute. And, but my advisor was a cool person. And I started to take her classes, her drawing, painting, advanced drawing, photography, and all the other art classes there. That they offered, and they have a very robust program. And then it was, because it's college prep school, of course, there's always this idea, well, you're going to be going to college. And as it kept getting closer, it's just like, oh gosh, Miss Goodale, I don't think I can do another 4 years of writing papers. This is so hard for me. And she said to me, she goes, oh, Leslie, it's simple. You'll just go to art school.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, huh. That's a way forward. So I remember coming home and telling my parents, I think I want to go to art school. And they just looked at each other and they're like, well, we're not going to tell you no, but it's not going to be easy. So, and my mom was great. She was really, I'm really fortunate because they were supportive, and above and beyond that, it was like, hey, I researched art schools, take a look at these and let's go visit some. And I didn't know that I wanted to do film yet. And at Rhode Island School Design, they have it set up so that your first year is really a freshman foundation kind of boot camp, where on Monday you have drawing from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. On Tuesday you have art history in the morning and maybe an English class or something. And then you have 2D design the next day and 3D design the next day. And I didn't know. And still during that period, just, I'm a creative person. I feel confident and good making stuff. Am I doing this because my parents are artists? Who knows? But I don't know. I think a friend sort of made a suggestion, like, based on what I know, maybe you should check out film. And I took the short winter term class, was like a film diary class. And I think I made a Super 8 film, and we watched a lot of films, and it was like, yeah, okay, I think this is it, but it was never like, I know exactly what I want to do. And it's always been more like I'm feeling my way around and just falling through the door.
Yeah. My guess is you're good at a lot of things, especially in art. So it makes it really difficult to sort of push all your chips into one medium.
Absolutely. And even going in that direction, I mean, it's always for me been very hybrid. I was, making films and video as I was learning how to work in those media. And then I also figured out, I include the School of the Art Institute of Chicago part on my bio because I went there during my undergraduate studies. I went there for my junior year, and it was like, all of my professors were artists first. And it was like, oh, this is, I feel like this is where my head is at. At RISD, they didn't necessarily encourage you to be super experimental. They encourage creativity and learning your craft.
Yeah.
But when I went to Chicago, it was like, oh, okay, how far can we push the medium to see what it's going to do? Or how can we explore it in different ways? So when I went back to Rhode Island to finish a final year and do a degree project, I went in a completely different direction. I don't think they knew what to do with me, because I said, I'm going to make this giant installation instead with all these moving image elements to it.
Yeah.
And I used film loops and video and monitors. And I mean, and I left, I think when I left, people were sort of scratching their head like, that was different. So I went on and kind of kept doing installation type work, where you would say, come into a room that had pancakes hung in a grid formation on all of the walls. And then there was a little viewer box that you could look inside that made a kaleidoscopic image. It had a projection projected on the back of it. And when you looked in, you could see this image of somebody close up of their mouth eating pancakes. And it would be all, a kaleidoscope because of this funny little box. So
yeah,
I was doing things like that, or a giant pile of pancakes with a monitor inside of it of somebody eating pancakes. I had this pancake phase for a while.
We know what we're eating if I come up to Michigan.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Maple syrup all the way.
Yeah.
And then, and I was still, playing with the medium of film. I found it really fulfilling to create a film and then enter it into festivals where it could kind of go on and have its own life without me. I mean, it is good to go to festivals if you can accompany your film,
right.
But I found that really rewarding, as opposed to I'm setting up this giant installation and now it's here for a month and then it's gone. So, I kept doing both things. And then when I met my husband, it was like everything, you're in my life. So now you have to be part of my art project.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he in his own right, he had a background in music and he was making art, interactive art. So we started collaborating together and making installations. And right after around the time 9/11 happened, a lot of people kind of did a look at what am I doing, and
similar that was moment now, right?
Oh, very much so. Even more, I think. What am I doing? No. At that time, what we decided was, hey, instead of we didn't completely stop doing installation work, but we developed a performance part of our collaboration so that we could be, we could take our art out and be with people, perform it for people. And we moved into this area. It could be called AV performance or live cinema performance. They're expanded cinema performance, lots of different terms for it. And I would do at first the video mixing live, and he would do sound mixing on his laptop. My first rig was an analog mixer, the Videonics MX1, where you could have 4 channels in, and I would hook up VCRs and DVD players. Yeah. And then, I'd have all my videotapes queued up and all these DVDs. And, we'd do a show where, we basically kind of create a movie for the audience as we went.
That's cool.
I found that a really fulfilling way to work, to be in relationship with an audience in a room and share something with them and be responsive to their energy. And we did that for a while. But really, I think at the time that I became a film festival director and started to run a nonprofit, that was kind of the put an end to a lot of things I was doing creatively.
I think, there's a lot to dig into there, but in terms of just your husband, meeting him and saying, hey, now you kind of have to be part of my world, not to be part of yours. That's exactly right. Because I think a mistake that creators make, we talk to them, they're like, well, I have a significant other. They're not an artist, but they don't get in my way. I actually think it's better if you can find someone who's really into your stuff without being a fan, not someone who's indifferent. are just not in your way. Because there will come a moment where you have to make a big play, and you're going to need that person to understand why it's so important. So you also mentioned the film festival. Let's dig into that. So this is the year that you celebrate the 60th anniversary of this festival. Do you have anything special planned for this year's festival, considering that? And is there anything we should know about that, just for those listening, if they want to come 60th anniversary, something that maybe you've done in the past that you'll do differently this year?
It's been a challenging year to plan for anybody. And for us, we were thinking at the beginning of the summer, like, wow, okay, we have 2 pandemic festivals in the can. And boy, we're excited because it looks like we're going to be able to be in the theater next year. It wasn't, it looks like, it was like, we're excited because we're going to be in the theater next year. And then surprise, Delta. So, I think as the landscape shifted to be not as rosy as we were all hoping, I had to do that it's wherever you want to put your mind kind of thing, where, okay, it's our 60th. Yes, it's a watershed year. It's important to have a big celebration, but you know what? Let's not worry about that too much. Let's just worry about having a festival. Let's try to have an in-person festival. Let's try to have a hybrid festival. And what's that going to be like? In terms of the hybrid nature of the festival this year, our plan is to have most of the things that are going to be happening in person be online. So for people who know our festival, I think our shorts and competition programs are probably the most well-known thing that we do. We'll typically program about, 120 shorts into this year. It's going to be 13 shorts and competition programs. And we have about $22,000 in award money that'll be distributed by 3 jurors, a bunch of different awards. And then there are feature and competition programs. And I think we have about 11 this year. So all of that is going to also be in the online festival.
Okay.
We'll also have, every year we have each of the 3 jurors present their own work so that people can get a sense of, like, who are these people?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Who's giving the awards? And
because we've been jurors a bunch of times, and all we have to do is kind of provide our bio and a picture.
Right. Yeah. So, here we're like, nope, you got to prove it.
Yeah. It's like getting verified on Twitter.
Yeah. So those programs are always really strong. So we're going to make sure that those are part of the online festival. So the thing that you have to come to Ann Arbor to see, which is kind of the special part this year for looking back at our history, we typically will have a series of what we call special programs, specially curated programs. So with our special programs this year, looking back at our 60 years of history, it's interesting because when you look back to see, who has come back time and time again and been awarded over the 60 years, like, it's true. Experimental film, I think, is a genre that is much more open. It has space for a diversity of stories, both the stories themselves and the way they are told. So anecdotally in our history, I think we've looked at ourselves as being diverse, as being open and welcoming to a wide variety of people. We've had an out night for, I think this is our 21st out night, which is a celebration of LGBTQ film. But when I started to look back at what are we going to do to celebrate 60 years, it was like, you know what? So many of these people who've returned time and time again, guess what? They're Caucasian men. And we love our Caucasian men, but I would say really,
I love a good Caucasian man.
I'm married to one. So I think in the last half a dozen years, especially, we had a programmer, Katie McGowan, who came on around 2016. She's now the managing director of Kresge Arts in Detroit, and she had been at Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit before that. We were really at a point where we were opening up to full transparency. We want to make sure that our filmmakers who are submitting to us understand exactly what our process is and, what to expect and how many films typically get submitted. How does the review process work? And anyway, she came to us with a personal mandate that matched our mandate, that we want to make sure that we are as diverse as we anecdotally think we are. Mm-hmm. So she really kind of helped us bust open the door on that. She got a Warhol Foundation grant, for example, to program a series or invite curators to program a series of film shows that focused on Black diaspora work. And that happened over the course of 2 years. We had maybe 6 different programs. That's just one example. And so we have been steering the ship deliberately in that direction. So how do you reconcile, wow, look at our past and look at where we are now? And I think the thing is, transparency, honesty, we can embrace our past, in a healthy way and recognize where we are at the present moment and be clear about where we're continuing to move. So with these special programs this year, that was the mandate that we gave to the curators that we invited. So for example, Julia Yazbek has put together a show. She's a local to Detroit. She has a place called Mothlight Micro Cinema. Mm-hmm. It's not a bricks and mortar, but she and her partner do program experimental film and have these pop-up shows in Detroit. And she teaches at Oakland University in Rochester. So we asked her, is there a way, take a look at Richard Meyer's films. And he's somebody who is central to the Ann Arbor Film Festival. He's a bit regional, but his films, he's from Ohio, but his films were such an important part of our festival. And I don't know how far they proliferated out in the world, but what we asked Julia to do was take a look at his films and program something that could include contemporary voices that have a relationship with what he did. Yeah. So that's one example. Another example is there's a program of work of past Ann Arbor Film Festival alumni. So we've had this past Ann Arbor Film Festival interns. So we've had this intern program since probably for about 30 years. And so it's interesting to see where some of our interns have ended up. And I think that's a great way to touch into younger voices, a broader diversity of voices. And then another example is James Benning is one of those experimental filmmakers who in the 60s, 70s, 80s, was solid. I mean, continues to be. He teaches at CalArts, still produces work, and was a major presence at our festival. He has a daughter, Sadie Benning, who is an artist in her own right, and she teaches at Bard College now. I think she does a lot of painting. She may still be making moving image, but she became known when she was a teenager. She got this Fisher-Price Pixel 2000 camera, the toy camera. And she made this series of incredible diary movies, about her coming out. And, she really became super well known. Though her work was never shown at our festival because for so many years we were we're celluloid only. We're not showing video, so we're not showing James Benning's work as part, that's part of our history, but we've made a space to show some of her work in a special program. So I think that in terms of celebrating our past, that's the real deal is you got to come to Ann Arbor to get in on that part this year.
That sounds exciting. And if you love film, there sounds like an embarrassment of riches there for people who are film lovers. So what are the dates for the festival again this year? You said March 22nd. Is that correct?
March 22nd to the 27th.
March 22nd to the 27th. All right. There you go. People listening, you know what to do.
That's right. And you can go online and check it out too.
Absolutely. What's been your biggest festival success since you became director in 2013? And what's been the biggest challenge?
All of the unsexy stuff. When I started, I had just came out of teaching for 14 years. I was teaching started at University of Michigan and then went to University of Texas, San Antonio, as you mentioned, and then was at Oakland University back here in Michigan. And I was teaching digital media, video, in art. And so I kind of came in through the side door with this job because I've been involved off and on. Well, since the 30th was my first year, the 30th Ann Arbor Film Festival, I've worn a lot of different hats, volunteering and, showing my work and arranging for to get artists here to do installations in storefront windows to help, boost up the festival aspect, the celebratory aspect of the festival. So as director, I somehow convinced myself, like, I think I can do this. My appointment at Oakland University came to an end and they were looking for an ED at the film festival. And I was so naive. I was like, what does ED mean? Is that education director? But I started to talk to people at that year. It was the 51st Ann Arbor Film Festival, and just like, I wonder if maybe I should apply for that. And every single person that I talked to said, oh, that's a great idea. You'd be great at that. Oh, the festival would be so lucky. And nobody was like, oh, you'd be totally nuts, And so I convinced myself, well, whatever I need to do to do the job, I'll figure it out. Because the way that this festival can kind of get it under your skin and become a part of you, like, I know that happened to me. And I see it happen to other people. There's a way that it opens up your mind in a way about what creativity is, how it can be, and how it can be communal too. I think that's a really important aspect of it.
Yes.
So I felt driven, and that there was some serendipity to this opening when I was looking for what to do next. And I guess I convinced myself well enough that I convinced the board, and they hired me to do it. And it really was. They skipped 1 year with an executive director. Somebody had left after the 50th. They went the 51st without. And so there wasn't anybody really to say, well, this is exactly what you need to do. It was like, okay, here is a timeline with all the functional areas of kind of the general what needs to happen in each month. Okay, September, sponsors. Okay. Oh, here's a spreadsheet of sponsors. I guess I'll call them all. So I really had to triangulate and just kind of learn how to do the job. It was, I feel like it was a little bit of a detective job to learn that. One of the hardest things for me was coming into this job and just having to learn how to manage people. I'm still learning, I would say it's just not easy in general. And it's not something that I really ever had to do. I mean, it's different working with students versus working with a paid staff. So that's always been a challenge, learning how to manage the financials. Like, I couldn't read a financial statement when I started. Fortunately, we had a really strong accountant when I began who supported that. And over time, I learned. I think working with the board has been one of the greatest pleasures of doing this job, besides getting to watch all of these incredible films and think about them deeply and put them together into programs. That's by far the most rewarding part. But I will say it was a surprise to learn what it is to work with a board and be given some really good advice at the outset of, the way you want to treat your board members is like they are your mother-in-law who just offered to take care of your kid for a couple hours. Everybody is busy and they're going to do the best job they can. Are they going to do exactly what you wanted? Probably not. And I would say, that really helped set me on the right course. That, and just knowing that, they were the brain trust of the organization. And when I first started, it was like, okay, I have 13 boss mentors here. So I can lean on them because I have knowledge gap and they're going to help support. So, and that's totally a not sexy part of, the film festival world. And anytime I talk about it, my husband is like, oh, nobody wants to know about that. Just talk about the films.
It's good because there's probably people in the audience here, the listeners here, that would go out and start their own film festival even. So just to hear what that's all about, I think is important, especially in this context. What's been the impact of having Ken Burns and Michael Moore as advisory board members? Yeah.
Ken is really so lovely. So I've had a chance to talk to Ken a few times, and he's just really quite lovely and supportive of the festival, and the work he's doing outside in the world with all of his productions is quite incredible. There's a funny anecdote. I feel like I don't remember where this quote comes from, but he did say, because he was here in Ann Arbor when he was in high school and he went to the festival with his dad a lot. He said, I saw my first boobs on the screen at the Ann Arbor Film Festival.
I read that. That's a quote on Twitter. And yeah, he saw his first set of breasts at the Ann Arbor Film Festival. But he didn't describe them. That's the only problem. We don't know what kind of breasts he saw.
Yeah, he's got the image seared into his mind.
I've heard a few Ken Burns interviews. He couldn't be more humble and gracious, and what a wonderful creative. And he's a Hall of Famer in my eyes, and I'm sure the eyes of many, many others. You're also a member of the Final Girls. Can you tell us what the Final Girls are and what it's meant to you to be a part of the group?
Well, I am not a super active member presently. It's been a couple of years really since I've been active with them.
Oh, okay.
So I know that they were a part of the Film Fatale group. I guess there are a lot of different chapters throughout the states and beyond. They decided to call themselves a different name. And they were having regular get-togethers. They probably still are, where women in the film industry in Southeast Michigan were coming together. We, come together to talk about what people are working on, what people might need some help with, or any help that they can offer. And for me, as the film festival director, I think it was really important to create some ties to our local chapter of that Film Fatale / Final Girls group, just to understand, what's going on in the creative lives of our filmmakers here. Watching there were film incentives in the state of Michigan that went away. So when I was an active part of the group, being able to hear how that was impacting those artists. People who had retrained, gone to school so they could work in film and started to make inroads in the industry here. And then those film incentives to go away. That was a period that was really hard because you can imagine having just invested a lot of time and energy in a whole new career, and that sort of you get the rug pulled out from under you. That was really a trying time. But it's great to really get to see this group that supports each other and comes together on a regular basis, and to provide that kind of community. So they have still been a community partner of the Ann Arbor Film Festival, and every year we make a attempt to pair them with a film that resonates, with themes that they embrace and identify with.
Very, very good stuff. You've been quoted as saying experimental film isn't just for diehards. Anyone could enjoy it as long as they're made to feel welcome. Can you expound upon what you mean?
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Of course.
Yeah, I think in our country, in our culture, let's say, I think in our culture, we have this interesting relationship with contemporary art where it's like this rarefied thing that exists over there in museums. And there's a certain culture around it that's maybe, a little snooty, and like your average everyday person. And I've heard somebody say this before, like as I was installing with my husband speakers outside of a gallery. We were up on ladders and had a show that we were installing, and people were walking by and they're like, oh, why would I want to go in there? I'd feel really stupid. Like this idea that you need to have studied art in order to appreciate it. And I would say that the art industry doesn't necessarily do a great job at like opening the doors wide open.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not about inclusion of different sexes or genders or races. Sometimes it's intellectual inclusion.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think that there's a great opportunity with film because of the nature of its exhibition, that it's a communal experience. And it's typically like, to go see the Van Gogh exhibition, you might have to buy a $20 ticket or something like that.
Okay.
Or to go to the DIA and see a special art exhibition, or you need to be a member, you pay whatever your admission is.
Right.
For the film, for going to see a film, it's the cost of admission to a film ticket, which is typically maybe a little bit more accessible, let's say. But I think that what people need to understand is that we all have the power to look at something and have an experience with it, like whether that's a painting, a sculpture, go hear a symphony, or whatever the case may be. But we've gotten this sort of like wrung out of us that, you need to study it. You need a special language, or, whatever the case may be. So it's a kind of like Martin Luther saying, actually, you don't need a priest to talk to God. You yourself can do that without the intermediary. I think it's the same thing. You can walk up to a painting on a wall and look at it, and you're going to have a thought or a reaction or a feeling or an emotion, or it might remind you of a dream you had or a conversation. And I think that the whole thing with these experimental films that we show at the festival, it's not only do you kind of meet the artist at the screen as you're watching the work, and you have permission to hear yourself. That's the first thing that people need to know. You have permission to hear yourself. And then when it's over, you can turn to your friend you brought with you, or walk out in the lobby and just walk up to somebody. What did you think of that one film? And compare notes. And I think that the work kind of acts as a base, from which you can then plug into, other people, and kind of create a relationship based out of conversations that come out of the work as an exploration, as opposed to like, hi, where are you from? What's your story? Where'd you go to school? It's like, you've got like this other thing that exists outside of two people that you can look at and consider.
Do you do a lot of your experimental film work at the Potter Belmar Lab, or is that for something else?
Potter Belmar Labs was the name of, and still is the name of, Jason and my collaboration. And we named it that because that was the street corner we lived on at Potter and Belmar.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's awesome. And I think you should look up a young lady, really young lady, named Dicey, D-Y-C-E-E, Dicey Wildman. So Wild Man. And she puts on a festival, experimental film festival, every year called Defy. She breaks her neck to do it. And I'm really proud of her and always support her every year that she does this. But if you ever can make it down to the South, stop by the Defy Film Festival. It happens in August every year. I think you'd really enjoy their selection of films and the whole vibe in general. It's small. You can meet every single person that attends it, and I'll be there. So that's
awesome.
If that's at all a bonus for you.
Totally is.
I'd love to take you through some speed round questions if that's cool with you.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, here we go. What are the 2 best pieces of advice you've received so far in your career, and who did they come from?
Oh my gosh, 2 best pieces. They came from former Ann Arbor Film Festival board chair, Ruth Bardenstein.
Ooh.
And she told me, number 1, the thing about your board members, treat them like they're your mother-in-law and be grateful and be respectful. And the other was, show me your budget spreadsheet. Okay, put a new column. Every time your accountant comes in, update the column with the new numbers every week.
Yeah.
Honestly, those are the 2 best pieces of advice. Also not sexy, but
lifesavers, right?
But lifesavers. Yep.
Absolutely. You've been in art your entire life. Which creatives do you most admire in film? And which do you want to emulate? David Lynch?
David Lynch pops right to mind because he's so masterful in that medium in terms of shifting and changing the reality. You never know where you are. Are you in a dream? Are you in the story? Are you in someone's memory? And as soon as you think you know, he'll pull a rug right out from under your feet. And I love that.
Yeah, he's a master at that because you can get in trouble by doing that to the audience if you do it at the very end, for example, and it's the only time you did it in the entire story, because then it ends up being this deus ex machina approach that can sometimes cheapen the journey of the story, where it's like, I don't have a way to creatively write myself out of the problems I've created for these characters.
Oh, yeah.
I can fix this.
Right. Everybody's actually dead and went to heaven.
Right. Exactly. So you have to be careful. But David Lynch is an absolute master at that. What are the biggest creative and business mistakes you see newcomers making? I know you're around a lot of new and young filmmakers.
I think young artists and everybody around them, we need to make sure artists get paid. This is a big deal in film festivals right now. Mm-hmm. And the Ann Arbor Film Festival, we started 2 years ago to pay films in competition, and we're trying to work our way up to, there's a standard from in Canada that's set for what kind of film rental fees should be. And so we're trying to use that as our baseline. But because of the economic landscape and how it's changed in the last, say, 10, 15 years, I mean, the gap between the haves and have-nots is bigger than it's been in a long time. You know, wealth concentration at the top. We all know the story. And it's the same for artists. And whereas before, it would be like, well, we don't pay artists for exhibiting in our competition program, just like any jury type of an art program in our country. You send your slides in or your film, it gets reviewed, and then you have a chance at being shown and getting an award. Well, I don't think that flies so well anymore. So we're trying to be more equitable and encourage others to do so. And I think that artists need to advocate for themselves. And I would encourage people to ask for screening fees. Don't be surprised if you get, sorry, we can't do that. My advice would be to be as respectful as you can, to make your case and be patient about it. You know, mm-hmm. I think it's important for, say, just film festivals to hear from the filmmakers, but to do it in a respectful way.
Yeah. It's like learning the lesson that your dad taught you without really teaching you. No, I'm not going to do it unless you can pay me double. Okay, we'll pay you double. like sometimes you just have to believe that you're worth a thing and then see what the response is. And I know for me, starting out, there was a heaping helping of imposter syndrome, where it's like, well, I can't ask for that fee. Who am I? Or like, I'm not worth that. And then I learned that, man, I actually am worth that. And I got that confidence through feedback from others around me, saying, oh, you're this. I was like, no, I'm not. Yeah, you are. Like, okay, God, maybe I should be asking for these, for what I'm worth. And by the way, that's also okay too. Because I think as artists, we say, oh, it's not okay. that I asked for this because I'm supposed to not care about money or anything because I'm an artist. And that's just not true. There's a great line in the French Dispatch, which is the Wes Anderson movie that came out a few months ago, where Adrian Brody is in this conversation with, I'm losing the actor's name. I love Benicio del Toro. And Benicio del Toro is this great artist. And he says, Adrian Brody says to him, "I'd like to buy your art." And Benicio says, "It's not for sale." And Adrian Brody says, "Yes, it is." And they go back and forth. "No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not." And eventually Brody says, "You're an artist. If you didn't want to sell your piece, why even make it?" So it's one of these interesting things that opens up a philosophical question, which is sometimes you're making the art as an end unto itself. But I know from a deep experience with creatives, we also want people to appreciate it. Almost every time we want someone to appreciate the thing that we made. And a lot of times that's going to happen through sharing it. And through sharing it, you almost need to sell it so you're not exploited.
Yeah, it's so complex because there's so much freedom for an artist in working outside of that money mindset,
Yeah.
And that as soon as you start to put the clamps on, things can get distorted. But I think it is so important to recognize that cultural creation, it's not a zero-sum game. I mean, just because someone's passionate about making a thing or working for a film festival doesn't mean it's not worth anything. Exactly. That it should be like zero. I can't tell you how many times when I'm looking at the entries on the Film Freeway site, and one of the questions that filmmakers can answer is production budget. Mm-hmm. And how many times are single experimental artists, they'll just put zero. They won't think their time is worth money. And it is a conundrum. Like I said, I think it has to do with the freedom of existing outside of the system and having the freedom to make and create and do. And it's like, I woke up in the morning and I just stopped in the studio and painted a little bit. And then I did the next thing and I went back. It's like, who's counting the minutes and the hours? It's just part of my life. But I think we need to figure out how to help people value their creativity and the time that they put into the things they do,
Absolutely.
It's not zero. It's not zero. You spent time on it. You bought materials probably for it. You've got a film camera, a video camera, if you were a production house out there, you would have a fee for how much, probably be built into your daily fee or whatever, but you better be sure the cost of that camera is a part of your daily fee. So It's just so hard for artists.
As a EP, there are a lot of executive producer of several features. There is a couple of tests that you can run to find out if you should invest. So we get a lot of deal flow and read a lot of screenplays. And, it's kind of like a 99 to 1% sort of no to yes ratio, unfortunately, just because of things as simple as too many grammatical errors or a really bad act two or whatever. But there are tests. And one of the tests that's interesting is, okay, how much does your film cost? It's $200,000. I'll say, well, what if it were $2 to $5 million? Let's bump that budget up to $3 to $5 million, and then let's do it. Oh no, I don't want that kind of exposure. I don't want to do it. We like it at this budget. You'll make your money back faster at this, but I was like, no, you won't. You won't. It's easier to make your money back at $3 to $5 million than at 200,000. It's not intuitive, but it's the truth. Because once you're at a certain budget level, then you can get a certain type of distribution that makes your money back. At 200,000, you're going to get a services deal, and you're going to get 6 cents per every hour and a half watched on Amazon, and it's going to be a long slog. So I love that test because it reveals whether or not the artist believes in the script they wrote and their execution. Because on the first meeting, where they give you the screenplay, it's their baby. It's all they've been working on. They know they can do it. But then when you say, hey, we're going to go into debt here, $5 million. then I don't believe in it that much. I don't think I can do that. I'm willing to lose your $200,000, but I'm not willing to lose a shared $5 million. Right. So it's a really interesting test. Good test. Resources. I'm curious, as an executive director, are there online resources, maybe a top 3 that you can share for helping filmmakers, helping creatives, or even helping experimental film makers?
One thing that popped to my mind is the Film Festival Alliance. It's our national professional organization for film festivals. And I recommend for any film festival to check it out. We just had a conference. I think it was last week. They do at least one annual national conference, and then they'll do a lot of regional ones. It was online this last time, but it's such a great forum to converse with your peers. And it's such a particular business, or model that it's really helpful. And we had all of our staff attended various things. So our marketing person checked out lots of marketing things, development, and our operations person was really grateful to be able to go to a session on, going back to in person and what does that mean, on the front of COVID protocols and being able to benefit from all of these other people in the field who've been doing that. So Film Festival Alliance is one thing that pops to mind. Other resources. For experimental filmmakers, I would really encourage people to check out our upcoming film festival. I think we had 2,800 submissions this year.
Wow.
I'm blown away by how much incredible work there is, Every year I am, but in particular,
what's the website for that?
This year, it's aafilmfest.org.
aafilmfest.org. I think I had that already, but thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Absolutely. But I think the work that you're going to see there will be inspirational. It will be revealing, compelling, raise questions. It will... some of it is just so beautiful to look at. And what we try to do is program a good variety as in all those shorts and competition programs. Our style is to try to mix it up between experimental documentary, experimental narrative, experimental animation, and have some of each in every program. We don't tend to title our different in competition programs. We want to leave it as open as possible so that the audience can come to their own conclusions without really being led down, a theme or a topic in particular. We do have a couple of programs that are genre oriented ish. One is music video. We have a lot of strong music video work this year. So we're going to do a music video program. We have one program dedicated to experimental animation. We've got our Out Night program celebrating LGBTQ work. And then we have one called Almost All Ages that's designed for to be attention span and content appropriate for people ages 6 and up. And we do find that adults really love this program too. It's a very accessible one and a great way to get your feet wet in experimental film if that's a little bit of a daunting prospect for you.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Well, Leslie, I have to tell you, I feel educated. I feel motivated. I'm ready to go conquer this weekend and conquer the world in the most creative way possible. Thanks to you. Can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media, find you on the internet, discover more about the Ann Arbor Film Festival, anything related to it at all?
Sure. Yeah. Our website is a great clearinghouse, aafilmfest.org. We are on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn at AA Film Fest. And we've also got an e-news, if you want to get something coming into your inbox, we typically do it once a month. And then as we get closer to festival time, we'll start putting out missives a little more regularly than that. But if you go to our website, you can sign up for the e-news pretty easily. It's pretty clear how to do that. So,
any places where we can find you if people want to reach out to you directly?
You can reach out to me directly. I think my email address is right on the website. It's just Leslie@aafilmfest.org.
Perfect. All right. So living dangerously, giving out the email.
Be careful.
So you guys listening know
after the festival, we're going to write to me. Things are off the
hook. You guys listening know what to do. We'll end on this. Have you ever had to use or had the opportunity to use your skills in Kung Fu and Tai Chi?
I haven't had to use those skills in any kind of a dangerous situation. I'll just say that. But I was walking down a slippery forest path last week and my feet slipped out from under me and I somehow managed to right myself and land in a squat on my left leg without, I think it's due to all of that training.
I'm imagining you doing a backflip and landing gracefully on one foot in a squat position with your arms perfectly out, kind of like this. Ready to crane kick anybody that comes towards you. I love it. And Leslie, I love this conversation as well.
Yeah, me
Go
too.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, one of my teachers always said, your best defense actually, like, just run, just get out of there. Don't confront, because that's when you really get into trouble.
I agree. When you're a kid, you always worry, oh, what are they going to say because I ran? When you're an adult, you're like, to hell with this. I think in 2019, I announced to the world that like the number one rule I'm going to live by is avoid crazy. So if I see crazy over there, like 10 feet away, I'm just going the other direction.
Yeah.
Even if I need to go over there for an errand or something, I'm going the other way. We'll just do that tomorrow. It's okay.
That's crazy. Great survival mindset. I love that.
No, it's free. Avoid crazy. I think it applies potentially in 2022 as well. Leslie, this has been a wonderful time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all your thoughtfulness and your time. And I hope that we get a chance to cross paths soon at the Ann Arbor Film Festival or at the Defy Film Festival down here in Nashville.
Well, terrific. Christopher, it's been a wonderful conversation, and thank you again for inviting me.
Anytime. I'll talk soon.
Okay.
Be good.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Make It Podcast. To find out more information about this week's topics, including links to relevant blog posts, projects, and indie creatives, please visit our website at www.bonsai.film. If you haven't already, you can join our podcast community on Apple Podcast or the podcast app of your choice by searching for Make It Bonsai Creative, and the show will pop right up. You now have the opportunity to support the production of this podcast. If you love Make It and are a true fan of what we're trying to accomplish in the indie film community, please visit www.bonsai.film and click Contribute. Contributions start at only $5 monthly. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _Bonsai Creative and on Facebook by searching for Bonsai Creative. You can provide feedback to us via email at contact@bonsai.film, and you can follow me, Chris, on Twitter at Flaming Your Heart. That's FLAMEINURHEART. And of course, if you're looking to take a big step towards your filmmaking success, go to www.bonsai.film and click on Services to explore a variety of offerings from keynotes and panels to pitch readiness assessments and so much more. You have everything to gain. Until next time, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for listening.
Tastemakers in the watch game like Gear Patrol have called their ceramic watch material almost magical and deemed their adventure-ready Cali Diver Automatic GMT the best sub-$500 dive watch, full stop. It's our friends at Movement. A Movement watch is built to run with precision, purpose, and X factors needed to make the best of the time you keep. From their best-selling automatics to innovative ceramics to more clean, inspired designs. Find your new Movement now at mvmt.com. That's mvmt.com.